Let's welcome all of our guests. We're honored you joined in today to be with us. We're so thankful you're here. God bless you so much. So I'm reading today from the book of Genesis, chapter 32, and verse number 24. And Jacob was left alone, and there wrestled a man with him until the breaking of the day. And when he saw that he prevailed not against him, he touched the hollow of his thigh, and the hollow of Jacob's thigh was out of joint. Now, if you've never had your hip out of joint, it's hard for you to identify with the pain Jacob is in right now. Because when the hip is out of joint, you not only have the joint misplaced, you have the muscle around it building up blood and becoming tight, but you've also got a sciatic nerve that goes down that leg that is being pinched. He is in uncontrollable pain at this time. But the Bible said in spite that his thigh was out of joint, in spite of the pain that he was enduring, he wrestled with him. And the angel said to him in verse 26, "Let me go, for the day breaketh." And he said, "I'll not let thee go, except thou bless me." And he said unto him, "What is thy name?" And he said, "Jacob." And he said, "Thy name shall be called no more Jacob, but Israel. For as a prince hast thou power with God and with men, and hast prevailed." And Jacob asked him, said, "Tell me, I pray thee, thy name." And he said, "Wherefore is it that thou dost ask after my name?" And he blessed him there. In spite of the pain and the agony he was in, he blessed him. And Jacob called the name of the place Peniel, for I have seen God face to face, and my life is preserved. The word Peniel means face to face with God. Verse 21. And as he passed over Peniel, after he had seen God face to face, after he had endured a night of pain and suffering, the sun rose upon him, and he halted upon his thigh. And the sun rose upon him. Thank you so much for reading the scripture with me today. I want to preach for a few minutes on the opening of our new year on the subject, the sun will shine again. If you study the life of Jacob, he's a very unusual and he's a clever and strange personality, to say the least, in the Old Testament. His name alone identifies what kind of boy or man he was going to be. Remember when him and Esau were twins and being born, it was Jacob that grabbed his ankle and tried to pull him back in. Jacob wanted to be first. And the word Jacob means to be a supplanter. It means to be a trickster. It means to be a crook. It means to be a con artist. It means to be a politician. No, it doesn't. I was just throwing that in there. But contrary to our mindset, when I think about Jacob and what has happened here and him stealing the birthright of his brother, I think of them in my mind being teenagers or young people or maybe in their early 20s. But in all reality, Jacob was 57 years old when he stole Esau's birthright from him. After stealing Esau's birthright, it was then that Esau made a pledge that he would kill Jacob for what he had done. So Jacob goes and his mother helps him, and his father is going blind. Isaac's going blind, and his mother helps him disguise himself as Esau, and Isaac blesses Jacob. And now Jacob flees for his life, and he runs to a place called Haran, which is on the east side of Jordan, which means worldliness. And he stays there for 40 years running from his problems, running from his family, and running from God. 40 years of his life is wasted out in a barren, mountainous desert on the east side of Jordan. 20 years of that 40 he spent in Laban's house. And you remember he ended up marrying 2 of his daughters. He loved Rachel. And he worked 7 years for Rachel. You know the story. And he went to marry her. And Laban, his father-in-law, decided to be a crook just like Jacob was. So he put a veil over Leah's face, which was the oldest daughter. The name Leah means big eyes. And you better, I tell you, you fellas better watch falling in love with these girls with masks on. Because I'll tell you, they can have beautiful eyes, but be as ugly as a duckling underneath that mask. So Jacob didn't know the difference. So he takes Leah and he marries her and they have their honeymoon together. He rolls over the next morning to hug Rachel, and it's her sister. So he takes Leah back to Laban and said, "Look, this is the wrong deal here. I didn't buy a Volkswagen, I bought a Cadillac." And he said, oh, no, no, no. It's our tradition here in Haran that you have to marry, the oldest daughter has to be married before the younger one. So he works 7 more years. He puts 14 years in working for a crooked father-in-law that's as sorry and low down as he is. Then after working 7 years a second time, he gets this woman called Rachel, which was really the love of his life. After that, he stays 6 more years in the household of Laban. In other words, they lived together. They probably lived beside him in a double wide or something. And then something happened with the family. Jacob became a raiser of sheep and cattle like his father-in-law, and they split, and Jacob lived there 20 more years with his 2 wives and family. So Jacob has now been gone for 40 years from Canaan. You got to understand, they don't have cell phones. They don't have Twitter. They don't have Instagram. Jacob has no idea what has happened back in Canaan for 40 years. Canaan has no idea what's happened to Jacob. Probably the family wrote him off and said he's probably dead and gone. Can you believe at the age of 97 years old, Jacob decides, I need to go back home to Canaan, and I need to get things right with my brother Esau. Jacob's whole life has been overshadowed with darkness, but it was caused to his own actions, his own deception, and his own thievery. When you dealt with Jacob, you were going to get burnt. Now in the darkest night of his life, he's presenting himself back to his brother that has made it very clear that if Jacob ever comes back to Canaan, he's a dead man for stealing my birthright. So he has set things up to meet Esau. It's been 40 long years. He's wondering what Esau's going to say, what his temperament will be. Esau was furry and hairy and red-headed, and he was rough, and he was a hunter. Jacob was smooth and a crook. So the night before he's to meet with Esau, he felt like he needed some time alone. So the Bible says he put his family on one side of a river, and he crossed to the other side, and in the midst of the darkness of night, Jacob is by himself. He starts a fire, and he's sitting on a rock, probably looking at the fireplace, and it's red. The fire coming off of those hot embers of timber are red, only to remind him of the flaming red hair of his brother Esau. He could feel the heat of the fire on his body. He's sitting there thinking about, am I going to die? Is he going to spear me? Is he going to cut my head off? Is he going to fillet me? And from out of nowhere, in the darkness of the night, somebody tackles Jacob from behind. Now, if I'm Jacob, and I know my brother's a hunter, the only way anybody could have snuck up on me and got to me without me recognizing is they had to be familiar with how to walk through the woods. So the first thing I'm thinking is, Esau has found me. So here it is, it's a one-on-one fight beside a campfire, and everybody else is on the other side of the river. And all night long, they could hear, ouch! Stop it! And the bushes would shake, and the trees would shake. And they'd hear somebody yell, ow! And all night long, that thing was a brawl. But somewhere in the middle of that brawl, Jacob realized this isn't Esau at all. This could be from God. And so the very thing that was hurting him and the very thing that he was running from, now he's embracing it. And he said, look, you've hurt me and you've hurt me bad, but I'm not letting you go until you bless me. Now, I'll tell you something, I've been in fights before where I got hurt and I got hurt bad. And the last thing I want to do is hug that dude and say, look, man, would you mind being a blessing before you leave? No. I'm getting away from that dude as quick as I can. But I've also found out through fighting that if you want to keep your opponent from beating up on you anymore, you don't run from him, you run to him. You grab him. And when you tie him up, when you see boxers and they're fighting up close, they'll say, and he tied him up, and he knows when he gets close and ties him up, he can't hurt no more. So Jacob quits running from what's hurting him and starts embracing it. And he grabs it and said, I'm going to get so close to you that you can't hurt me anymore. And you're not only going to stop hurting me, I'm not letting go till you bless me. And the angel said, let me go. And he said, I'm not letting you go. And the Bible said he touched the hollow of his thigh, and he knocked his whole hip. His whole pelvic area is dislocated. The sciatic nerve is throbbing. The muscles are tightening up. There's a pain coming out of those bones rubbing on each other. And Jacob said, you can hurt me all you want, but I'll tell you something. I've done got an attitude. I am not letting go till you bless me. You're going to have to be good to me. And the Bible said the angel touched the hollow of his thigh, and he said to Jacob, what is your name? He said, I'm a trickster. I'm a con artist. I'm a supplanter. My name's Jacob. He said, it won't be from now on. Your name's Israel. Israel. Israel means a prince with God. What? God doesn't want anything to do with me. I've run from my God, my family, and everything, my problems for 40 years. Yeah, but you've prevailed, and you've showed power, and you've hung on, and you didn't quit because you got hurt, and you didn't give up because you didn't feel good, and you didn't turn back because something brought you pain. But you decided that no matter how much you hurt, how much pain you had, how far down you went, how dark the night was, you wasn't letting go till God blesses you. I'll tell you something. The best day of our Christian life will be when we stop running from what's bothering us and embracing it and saying, God, I don't know how you're going to do it, but don't let it go until you bless me. So Jacob wrestles. He's tackled and he ends up fighting till he's exhausted. But in the midst of that weary night of fighting, the Bible says, when Jacob got up the next morning, he had a staff. He couldn't walk straight anymore. Matter of fact, he never walked the same anymore. Hebrews 11 said he died leaning on that same staff. You see, once you meet God face to face, it changes the way you walk for the rest of your life. Is that right or is that right? Okay. And the Bible said in the middle of his pain, in the darkest night he'd ever been through, the Bible says, and the sun rose on Jacob. I want to say to you, some of my people, maybe many of our people, have been through dark hours before. I know what it's like to get up in the middle of the night personally and look at the star-quilted sky and wonder, is the sun ever going to shine in my heart again? The tragedies, the pressure, the decisions, the disappointments, the heartache have been so heavy sometimes, I wanted to run. There's been times I've sat in church and the most glorious sight I saw was the exit sign over the door. Thinking if I could just leave life and run, maybe get a new beginning somewhere else. And if you've never been there, you will get there in your life. But if there's one thing Jacob has taught us about everything, it's simply this. You can run, you can hide, you can lie, you can start over, you can hit the reset button, but somewhere down life, you got to face the mistakes you've made. You've got to hit them head on. You got to take responsibility for them. You can't be a runner. You can't be a rambler. You can't relocate every time something doesn't go right in your life. You'll be a gypsy and a vagabond all of your life. You got to buckle down and say, this is where God put me. God knows what I'm going through. He knows what I don't. I don't deserve anything anyhow, but I am dumb enough to believe that if I'll embrace this and walk with God and head toward the sun, somehow he'll turn my Jacob into an Israel and turn my life around. So, do you need to turn back to the pathway of light in the midst of your darkness, a divorce, a financial crisis, emotional problems, family distress? Is there something that's making your Christian life lose its light? Turn to the sun, for he will gladly shine upon thee again. Let me show you some things that God turned around in Jacob's life and made the sun shine on him when he didn't think it would ever shine on him again. But God made it happen anyway. And he can make it happen in your life and in mine as well. Let me mention a couple of them. What about Jacob's finances? Now, when Jacob stole his brother's birthright at 57 years old, Jacob fled with absolutely limited or no investments or means of security. In other words, he had no money. He was thought to be a crook that would die broke all alone. Matter of fact, when he got to Haran, Jacob was so broke, they hired him to be one of the keepers of the beasts of the field. And if you'll study the Bible, you'll find out that was kids' jobs. That's what teenagers did. They were the ones that took care of the beasts of the field. You remember when Samuel called for David to be anointed and he brought him out from taking care of his father's sheep. He was 15 years old. Here's a guy, 57 years old. He's new in town. He's working for minimum wage. And he's doing jobs that little kids are doing. He's starting on rock bottom. He doesn't have any place to stay. He doesn't have a tent. He doesn't have a jackass, so he has no automobile. He's on the bottom, and it looks like this guy has absolutely no future at all. But one thing I'm going to give Jacob, even though he was wicked and wild and crazy, there's one thing I'll give Jacob that you can't give a lot of Christian people. He was not afraid to work. Jacob was a worker. And you'll find in Genesis chapter number 30, he was not only a worker, but he was a con at doing it. So he goes to his father-in-law that had conned him about his wife, and here's what he said. He said, look, I'm taking care of all these animals. It's getting so big. I want to start my own business. So Laban, here's what I want to do. Every animal that's born that's spotted, I get it. Every animal that's born that's all one color, the hair, you get it. Well, Laban laughed at him and said, sure, we'll make that work, because all Laban's stock was one color. He thought Jacob must be out of his mind. Why is he saying he'll take the spotted when I don't even have a spotted? If you'll read the story, Jacob took some trees, some almond trees and others, and he peeled the bark off of them, and he cut them so that the white inside could be seen, and he set them in front of the watering troughs. And when the sheep and the goats and the camels and all the beasts of the field and all the cattle would come and drink, that had an effect on their conception, and all of a sudden, everybody started dropping spotted animals. Nothing was one-colored anymore. Laban scratching his head and saying, how in the name of heaven is he spray painting these things? I got a black male and a black female, and I got a 7-colored baby coming out of that thing. Somebody ain't being faithful to one another. And all of the livestock began to be spotted. And Jacob was blessed so much financially that he had to break away from Laban, and for 20 years he had his own business. See, that gives me a principle. That even if you're not a Christian, there's something about God honoring a man that works. Because if you'll go back to the book of Genesis, before God ever gave Adam Eve, the first thing God ever gave Adam was a job. Which means you teenage girls that are dating these boys with a seat of their britches dragging the ground, and they're moles, and they've never had a job, and they have no ambition in life, and they're... I'm just going to say it. Don't come crying to me when you marry a loser and you got to stand in soup lines the rest of your life. If that thud won't work now, he's not going to work when he gets grown. There's something about God blessing the labor of a man's hands. Am I preaching now or am I preaching now? Yeah. God blessed him. He ain't even right with God. He ain't even right with God, but God blessed him. Why did God bless him? Because he had a willingness to work. The Bible said when Nehemiah built the wall, they had a mind to work. If working kills you, some of you will live to be 250 because you're low down and sorry, and all you want is a couch and a remote and a football game, and that's why you will never own nothing, that's why you will never have nothing, and that's why you will never accomplish nothing, because you don't know how to work. I do more work in my sleep than this generation does in a week's time. It's pathetic. You mention a job, they break out in a rash. You throw them a job application, they hyperventilate. Look here, big boy. If you're big enough to get married, and you're big enough to have a family, and you're big enough to get a girl pregnant, you ought to pick your pants up, go get you a job somewhere, and pay your bills, and learn how to work. And you girls that are dating these boys that won't work, you're headed for trouble. You'll have to support that bum the rest of your life. I don't care if you clap. You think I give a flip. You're not clapping because you're guilty. 75% of entrepreneurs, their business folds up within 1 year because they're so lazy. They thought just starting a business without work will make a business succeed. 3 out of every 4 die within their first year. I was so poor growing up that I was going to make money one way or the other. My wife lied on her job application, told him she was 16, she's only 15, and worked at a cup and saucer place. I think it was 25 cents an hour. 25 cents an hour. I was 7 years old. My daddy never liked to shop. I got a lot of that in me. My daddy never went to a department store, grocery store. The only thing I ever seen him go into was an automobile parts store because he was a mechanic. So Daddy would take Mom to wherever we had to go, grocery shopping and stuff, and he'd sit in the car. The old timers did that. We didn't shop with our wives. Old timers didn't do that. That was soft. And so men would sit in the car and listen to the radio and smoke. And their wives, you're laughing, but you know it's true. And their wives would go in and shop. Well, I was sitting in the back of the car, and I'm dead broke, and I want a candy bar, and Dad's as broke as I am. I said, Dad, I'd like to have a candy bar. He said, son, I'm broke, you're not getting a candy bar, shut up. That's child abuse now, but that's how they talked to us back then. So about that time, an elderly woman come out with her shopping cart, and she got to her car, and she was unloading her groceries. And I was about 7. I said, Dad, that lady don't need to walk all the way back up there with that cart. I'm going to go get her cart and take it back. I went over there. I got out of the car, and I said, ma'am, I'll be glad to see. Back then, we didn't have stations out in the middle of the parking lot because we're so fat and lazy. We won't take it all the way back up to the store, so we just let them go across the parking lot and hit other cars. So they've had to put stations all through the parking lot. Oh, God, am I preaching today? They ain't a holy hoot in this place today. So people are so lazy. You know I'm telling the truth. They're so lazy that they got to put these other places in the parking lot because nobody is going to walk that 15 steps to take that cart back. Woo! I'm having a good time today. I may just stay right where I'm at. So I grabbed that cart, thought nothing of it. I said, ma'am, I'd be glad to take it back for you. I took it back, and I started back toward the car, and she looked at me and said, hey, Sonny, I want to give you a nickel for doing that for me. I said, ma'am, I didn't ask for any money. She said, no, I want to give this to you. 7 years old, standing beside a 1966 Ford Galaxy 500, I started Phil's shopping cart return service. 7 years old, I started Phil's shopping cart return service. I'd go to that parking lot. Everybody went on Fridays because that's when they got paid. So if you went at the other days of the week, you was wasting your time. They carried it in a bag. But you went on Fridays, that's when they really got their groceries. And of course, because I wasn't union, here come these other pug-nosed kids trying to take my business. And I stabbed one of them, but the rest of them, I'm non-union, I can do what I want. So the rest of them, you know what them old people say? No, Phil's my cart returner. We don't want to do business with you. I had little cards I wrote on a piece of paper, Phil's cart return. And before you know it, brother, I would go up there on Fridays and I would leave with $3, $5, $7. I'd buy candy bars, put them under my arms and my socks. I had Diet Cokes. But you know, yeah. You laugh, but I made money. You know what 7-year-old kids do now? They don't look up long enough to see somebody pushing a shopping cart because they can't take their eyes off their iPhone. All they know how to do is sit around and work their 2 thumbs. I know what I'm talking about. Bless God, most of you young kids, these are the only 2 muscles that you ever use in your whole life. You never amount to anything. You're 110 pounds overweight. All you do is eat, sleep, and play on your phone. You parents are to blame for that. You ought to make your kids get up off the couch, teach your daughter how to wash dishes, teach them how to wash clothes, teach them how to run a vacuum cleaner, and you boys need to put on some coveralls and get a shovel and go outside and learn how to dig dirt and learn how to fix a car and learn how to... If you young men would spend as much time learning how to do a trade as you do make an excuse for not having one, you could be a millionaire. But because you're sorry and you're lazy and you only want to do what you got to do, this is how you will spend the rest of your life. So have I made myself clear? God blessed him financially. Maybe you're going through a financial storm right now. Maybe you think you're so far gone, God could never turn this around. You keep the direction of your life toward the sun and be willing to work when other people want to sleep. The Bible condemns a man being lazy in the folding of the hands and the sleeping of the eye. In the book of Proverbs, God condemns them. Did you know God curses men that will not work? Don't tell me you can't find a job. There are hiring signs everywhere. Now, you want $20 an hour. You're no skilled labor, you have no college degree, and you want $25 an hour. Well, here's how you do it. You get 2 jobs. You get one making $10 an hour, and you get one making $15. Work 2 jobs, now you got $25 an hour. But no, you're going to sit at home and complain because you can't make $25 an hour instead of getting your butt up and get to work. You know what? I got 3 minutes left. I'm just going to hang right here where I'm at. You remember, there are two philosophies about working. You are either making money or you are making somebody else money. That is the only two philosophies there are in life. So if I'm going to work and put in the labor, if I'll honor God, tithe, and discipline myself, and put in the extra hours and nobody's willing to put in, I can have the favor of God on my business. But if I'm looking for a way to get out, and I'm sorry, and I'm lazy, and I'm waiting on an inheritance, some of you can't wait for your parents to die, because that's what you think you're going to live on later on in your life, which is a bunch of bull. And if I was your parents, I wouldn't leave you stinking dip of used snuff is what I wouldn't leave you. You should never rely on what you're going to get. You ought to get your butt up out of bed. Go find you a job somewhere. When my boy turned 16, he's watching my broadcast right now. My boy turned 16. We had cake. We had ice cream. Everything was fine. It was just like any other 16-year-old party. And you know what I gave him for his birthday? A bucket and a squeegee and a bottle of window cleaner. And I said, welcome to the real world, son. You're now able to work. I want you to get in your truck. I filled it up with gas. And don't you come back down this driveway till you own a business. You're not laying up here on me and me taking care of you, waiting on me to leave you an inheritance when you die. I'm not leaving you nothing. Now get your butt out of here and don't come back till you own a business. When he came back that night, he had a card made. It was All Clean USA. And he started washing windows at restaurants. Made $15 an hour on average washing windows at a restaurant. Later on, he got into carpet cleaning. Later on, he got into pressure washing. You know why all that started? Because I said, you're not laying up here and watching television while I'm cutting the grass and your mother's doing dishes and I'm out weed eating and you're going to lay here and watch a football game. Hell no, that ain't happening in my house. Get your butt up and find something to do with your life. Well, I'm out of time and I lost most of you anyway. I remember when I got saved, and I'm done with this. I remember when I got saved, there was a little corner store that was across the street from the gang that we had. It was directly across the street. And it was called Bills and Tills. And it was ran by a man and his wife named Bill, and her name, of course, was Till. And they had a candy shelf in there, and he would put newspaper over it so the sun wouldn't melt it. And every once in a while, when I just couldn't stand it and I thought I would die, I didn't do it often, I would go in there and sneak a candy bar. Dead wrong. Stole it. And, of course, it was always a Reese cup. That's the only candy in the Bible. And so I would steal a Reese cup. I'm talking about back when they had some size to it. Back when they were as big as a silver dollar and they cost a nickel. Now they're big as a nickel and they cost a silver dollar. And once in a while, I'd steal one of them. Well, when I got saved, God dealt with me about that, and I went down to Bill's store, and he was old and up in age then. I said, Bill, I need to talk to you and your wife about something. And I'll never forget, they came out to the counter, and he said, what you need, Phil? My parents had bought there all my life. I said, Bill, I want you to know that I got saved. I got born again. And that street gang I've been in for all these years, I'm not going back. I turned in my colors, ripped up my vest, burned all that stuff. I'm done. I said, I got born again, Bill. And I want you to know, as a little boy, there's been times I've come in here and I stole candy. And I'm here to give you a $20 bill. I know that's going to cover everything plus. I want you to know I'm sorry. I should have never done that, and I want to pay for that. He said, Phil, let me and my wife tell you something. You never stole the candy bar that we didn't see it. I said, man, I just thought I was that good. He said, but here's why we never said anything to you. Because when people I'd hear stories. When you steal from Bill's, he grabs you by the arm and slaps you on the rear for stealing. I said, man, I don't want nobody slapping my rear. But he never did that to me. And he said, let me tell you why. You never took more than one. And I knew you did it because you were hungry. He said, when boys come in here and grabbed a handful of candy or girls and put it in their dress or their pocket, he said, I grabbed them, snatched them up, popped them on the rear, and sent them out. But he said, I'd never seen you take over one. And I knew you wasn't stealing because you wanted to. You were stealing because you were hungry. And I tell you what I want to do. I took my family down there. I said, I want you to meet my wife and children. He took bags of candy and filled up bags and gave them to each one of my kids and said, you got a good daddy. I've known him his whole life. And as long as me and my wife's alive, anytime you come to Bills and Tills, I'm going to give all your kids a free bag of candy. I said, Mr. Bill, what about, And he took my $20 and ran me out the door. But even in our financial failures, when we've been down to nothing, if you will keep God first and work hard and honor God, God can even bless you financially. I promise you.
These are the days of Elijah, declaring the word of the Lord. And these are the days of your servant Moses, righteousness being